Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another piping hot episode of CEWL Beans, your go to podcast for all things related to teaching, especially induction teaching. I'm Marcella Wine-Snyder, one of your co hosts, and I'm joined by educator extraordinaires and fellow co hosts of CEWL Beans, Angelica McDonald and Todd Scholl. And we are absolutely thrilled to be your guides on this journey through the exciting and sometimes challenging world as a new educator. Folks, we have a sizzling episode brewing for you today, so grab a cup of your favorite brew. Take note of the encouraging message on my cup. We're about to dive in. So, in this episode, we're going to dive into communicating with parents, i.e., parental involvement, parental engagement. And although these aspects are crucial for all teachers, it's one of the most anxiety inducing aspects for induction teachers. Why do you think that's so, Todd and Angelica?
Hmm. I think I reflect back into my first year and I'm just out of college. I think I was 23, 24 when I first started teaching because I got a degree and then I decided I wanted to teach, so I had to go back to get certified. And I remember the first IEP meeting that I held. I was teaching on a permit. I was teaching special ed on a permit,
Mhm.
and I was having to conduct this IEP meeting. And I remember the parents came in, and it was very intimidating because I don't feel like an authority figure, and yet I'm kinda having to be one, and it's a little bit intimidating because you don't wanna do something to upset the parents, you don't want to, like, embarrass your school or whatever,
Mhm.
or and have your administration get upset with you, but I think it takes time to build that confidence where you can speak with parents and not feel nervous about it, not feel intimidated.
Absolutely. What about you, Angelica? Why do you think this is so anxiety inducing for first year or beginning teachers?
Because kind of going off what Todd said, so you said he's just coming out of college. So if you're kind of thinking about that age group, so I'm a high school teacher. So when I am with these students, I'm literally just a few years ahead, older than them. Once they found out my age, I try not to tell them my age, but they're like, "Oh, Miss McDonald, you're the same age as my big sister." And so you're so young and you're not used to talking to, like, I'm a person, I'm good with older people, but sometimes, especially if you're young, you're used to talking to peers your own age. When you're talking to someone older than you, you're used to them telling you what to do versus you telling them about their child. And so it's kind of interesting having those conversations. So you're the adult. And so a lot of young teachers have to change their mindset. Hey, I'm an adult too. I'm an authority figure. And sometimes you lose that confidence because you're just coming out of college. And so you don't feel like you have the experience, but you also have to know you are the expert in the classroom. You know what their child is doing every day. So you have
Mhm.
experience. You may not feel that confidence, but sometimes you just got to fake it until you make it. And just like have some kind of notes or something while you're talking to to the parent. But it's also because you don't know how that parent's going to react, because again, that's their baby. No matter how they're acting in your class, at the end of the day, you have to think about it. That's your baby. And you don't want to say the wrong things about their child, but you're also trying to help them. So you just don't know how they're going to react to whatever you have to say to them.
Mm.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we know that parents are vital in ensuring their children's safety, their security, their well being, as well as their educational success. And so we do know that parents want to be involved in their children's education. So, but few people know that there's a difference actually between parental involvement and parental engagement. And so we're going to start with that tonight. Um, so let's talk about the differences between the two. So, an involved parent is one who takes part in activities, something that's already determined by the school. For example, classroom volunteering, attending and chaperoning school activities. But an engaged parent takes it a little bit further. They take it a step further. They often become part of the school's decision making process. So that's the difference between the two: involvement versus engagement. Involvement means taking part in activities already determined by the school, whereas engagement means taking it a step further, becoming a part of the decision making process. So you think of the two as sort of complementary with an E, not an I. And those together produces better outcomes for students, I believe.
Absolutely. And there is this kind of false narrative going around that schools don't want parental involvement or engagement. We absolutely do. It's vital to the success of a classroom to have parent support. And I remember as a teacher, I wanted to be as transparent about what was going on in my classroom as possible, and I wanted the questions and I wanted the engagement. I think you get it at different levels. What I notice is you get a little bit more of that involvement and engagement at the elementary level. By the high school level, they're kind of like, they'll take care of themselves. So as a high school teacher, I didn't have a few showed up for open house,
Mhm.
and a few that kind of got engaged. But I mean, for the most part, they were kind of hands off unless there was a major issue.
Okay.
Definitely, especially in the high school, because that's my realm. And actually, we have parent teacher conferences next week. And so it's gonna be kind of interesting how many parents, do show up. But I think especially in elementary, that's really, I'm not saying high school is not important, but for elementary, it's those vital years. So making sure, is my kid going to be successful? So of course you see a lot more involvement and engagement, because again, with elementary schools, they always offer all these like fall festivals and all these fun things that parents can kind of get involved with, grandparents and cookies, or mamas and cookies, or, these different events. While in high school, you're just kind of focused on, are they just going to graduate? Which sadly, it kind of feels that way. And so a lot of parents either feel disengaged, or also they maybe not involved because you're trying to, because I remember one parent, she was telling me she was trying to stay hands off a little bit because she wanted her child to kind of take the reins a little bit to see if she was more focused on her education along with her sports. But the student was struggling a lot. And so the parent didn't notice until report cards like, hey, my student is really struggling. But she was really not trying to, not be involved, but she was trying to help her kid to, take the initiative. But I guess she figured out like, I need to be more hands-on. But also with high school, it's kind of hard to be in communication with all your students, because with elementary, you have maybe 36 students, maybe 40, I don't know, for the whole year, while in high school, you might have 100 and something students. And so it's really hard, especially for high school, trying to figure out how do I make sure I communicate with every parent, and just, making sure every parent is kind of involved if they want to get involved, because some parents really don't want to, and that's, their choice. And then there's some parents who want to get involved, but they just don't know how. So same thing with what we talked about earlier with, sometimes teachers being afraid to talk to parents. Sometimes it's vice versa. Like I've literally had parents say, like, I was kind of afraid to talk to you because I was afraid, how my kid was really acting in class. Like they want to know, but then they don't really want to know how their kid is truly acting in the classroom.
Right.
Right. So to break it down a little further for our induction teachers, involvement versus engagement. We know that involvement include activities, like I said, classroom volunteering, attending and chaperoning school events, participating in parent-teacher conferences, other communications with teachers. But this is the point where it's largely controlled by educators who invite parents to participate. So think of involvement as one-way communication, whereas engagement it involves two-way conversations. Okay. So engagement, let's say you are a parent of a special needs student. And so participating in training for those students with special needs, that's being engaged. Being involved in any key school activities or school-wide decisions, that's engagement. So where schools intentionally give parents sort of the opportunities to offer their own input or develop their skills, what have you, that's engagement.
Yeah. As a parent, I've now taken two kids through public schools, and now I have my daughter in 8th grade. And I think here in Horry County, the schools do a really good job of having different types of communication. And I am the type of person that I tend to be more hands off because my kids are doing fine on their own. I mean, I go to their games and concerts and things like that and other school events. But in general, they're doing fine academically, and I don't really need to kind of be super engaged in that part of the equation. But I
Mhm.
think it's really important that schools understand that a lot of parents are really busy, and to make sure that the communication is is not just one thing. So it's not just like an email, or not just text messages, not just a website. Like, it's like a variety of different ways that you can reach parents, because um, you know there's just so many different ways that parents are receiving information. I mean, just like if there's a school closure, where do I go for that? Um,
Right.
am I going to the website? Am I going to the Facebook page? Whatever. So it's really important, I think, for induction teachers to maybe on a survey, if one doesn't already exist, to ask the parents, what is your preferred way of communicating, and having that, and then knowing which parents need which different type of communication is really an important thing to do at the beginning of a school year or semester.
Right. Absolutely. I think that schools grapple with that too. They grapple with how to engage parents. And one thing is to just simply ask them, how do you want to be engaged? Because we know that at some level, I think they have a handle on how to get parents involved,
Right.
so to speak, but engaging them further is something that they're grappling with and learning how to do better.
And I like how you guys said like different forms of communication. So I wish I kind of knew that my first year, because I would just send the emails that I saw, in Power School. But then I found out sometimes in Power School that wasn't the email the parent was actually using. And so it wasn't until parent teacher conferences I would get, conversations like, why didn't you email me or call me? And I said, I did try and show them, but that was not the email they preferred. So
Mhm.
especially during
Right.
parent teacher conferences that first time, what I've now started doing after my first year, I just had to shoot what was that kind of quick survey, something written. Do you prefer a call, for me to call you, or to email you? And also, first year teachers, make sure you do not give parents your actual phone number. You can also use Google Voice, because you don't want parents to actually have, or especially not students too, but make sure they don't really have your actual phone number. So try to use Google Voice, or if your school does give you a actual phone, use that as well. So you can kind of still keep that separation. You want to be, very involved with parents, but you don't want to be so involved that it's
Right.
completely taking much of your time. You're also, it's kind of blurring those lines of, professionalism as well. So if your school doesn't provide a phone, but a teacher told me to use Google Voice, a little app on your iPhone, gives a fake number, but you can still communicate to them that way. That also helps as well.
Yeah, and along those same lines, it's really important that our induction teachers who are watching really are familiar with district policy or their school policy regarding communication, particularly social media. You may be already friends with parents of students that come into your classroom. You don't even know that you're already friends with them. It's really important to be careful about what are you putting out there publicly for the world to see on your social networks. That's really important. I have seen some teachers that will actually create a separate social media account as an educator, like Mr. Scholl's classroom or whatever, and have social media accounts where they can post stuff that's going on in the classroom, and that helps connect with those parents who prefer to communicate through social media. Just got to be really, really careful with your personal social accounts, what kind of content you're putting on there, and who you're connected with.
Right. And so let's delve into a few tips for communicating with parents. So, one tip I would offer is to establish open channels of communication. So, induction teachers, at some point, you may have to make the first move. So, invite parents to participate, communicate their value. Show them that their contributions, whether it's big or small, can actually make a significant impact. Um, in your classroom and for their child's education. So induction teachers, don't be shy.
I would say one of the ways, if you look particularly at the high school level, um, where it can be challenging to get that engagement from parents, is but they will come to events. They'll come to sporting events, they'll come to concerts and things like that. But if you're in a class, that doesn't have a lot of events, you can create events. We used to do benefit concerts, and I would have student exhibits and things like that. So have a night where parents can come in and students can make presentations or can show some of the work they're doing. And this also helps motivate the student work, because I always talk with teachers, when you assign a student work and the only person who's going to see it and evaluate it is you, there's motivation there if they care about the grade. But if they're creating work that's going to be seen by the public, by other parents, by other students, by the school, by the community, or something you want to put online, all of a sudden that adds some motivation and inspiration to really be invested in doing quality work, because it's not just for a grade for one person.
Right. So we talked about emails, phone calls. Angelica mentioned apps. Todd also mentioned, sporting events. Those are all ways to connect and communicate with parents. Okay.
And I also like to add too, especially as a young teacher, especially if you're elementary or high school, make sure you also set office hours for yourself with parent communication, because that will also kind of give you, because we've already talked about earlier in a previous podcast, like your work-life balance, you don't want to be overwhelmed.
Yes.
So what I try to do, especially my first year, I forced myself my first year, especially with online and COVID, you get emails all throughout the time. What I forced myself, I would only email parents. I might look at the email, but I refuse to respond to to parents or to students until I'm actually at school from 8 to 4:30. And that kind of keeps your, mind intact a little bit, because if you're looking at something at 11:59 p.m., you should be asleep, hopefully, or doing other things, getting, with your family. So set office hours for yourself. I even put it in my syllabus. I said I will not respond. I'll only respond from like 8 to 4:30, and I don't respond to emails over the weekend. I might check it, unless it's something really important, I might respond. But overall, it can wait. So always know some things can wait. So don't feel like you have to respond right then. And sometimes it's good to wait, because it allows you time to figure out what you're going to say. So don't always respond right then. So if a parent sends you maybe a nasty email because maybe something happens, do not respond in the moment. Take a breather, get some water, walk around, talk to another teacher first, because you do not have to respond right then. So don't wait 2 weeks later, but give yourself a little bit of time before you respond. So don't feel like you won't feel overwhelmed. So that's something my mentor told me, and I made sure I did that day one. And that has helped me tremendously with my work-life balance with parent communication.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I concur with take a breather first. Don't respond in the heat of the moment.
Yeah. I really love that, Angelica, about setting boundaries and really, really carving out that time for yourself in the evening and on weekends where don't feel obligated to respond to every email. That includes not just from parents, but from colleagues, administration, that kind of thing. I mean, really carving out and protecting that time, because it's so easy to give that time away. And I also think your point about, I would add, if you get a nasty email and you're not, and it's pretty nasty, you may want to take that to administration or to a mentor or someone like that and have them read it and determine whether or not this is something that needs to be handled in a different way and not by you. Because especially if you're chronically getting harassment or nasty emails from a parent, you need help with that. And it doesn't need to be there should never be an argumentative exchange between you and a parent ever. It should, that should be handled by administration there's a conflict of that level.
Right. And conflicts need to be escalated. So,
Yeah.
Okay. Another tip is to initiate positive contact early. And I think we mentioned this a little bit before, but do it early in the school year, not just, at the spur of the moment or at the time when, there's an issue going on with the student. So, usually if you've had a positive interaction with a parent already, when you have to go back to them or reach out to them because there is an issue, it's better well received or better received.
And I can't agree with that more enough. So I know my second year or third year, I had a really tough class. And so I made it upon myself. I said, let me just go ahead and call the parents about every student, whether they're doing very well or if they're, not doing so well. And then I noticed when I called every single parent, whether they contacted me back or not, or sent emails, I noticed in that class, most of my class, like 90% of them, or 89 or 99.9% of the class, they were actually all really good kids. But I was just focused on the kids who were just getting my attention. So I kept saying to my men, I would always try not to say like this class is bad or anything, but it was really, nagging on me. But once I made that communication and talking about the kids who were doing well, I noticed most of my class were really good kids. And I was just noticing just certain behaviors of certain students were just focused on them. And then a lot of parents were actually emailing me back, like, thank you so much for telling me about my child. I never hear anything about them. Like I was telling how one kid, he's quiet, but he does his work. He was very sweet and respectful. He greeted me every morning. Doesn't talk in class, but he does his work. And then ever since then, now he's a senior this year. So every day he still makes sure he says hey to me. So I'm really glad that year I've really learned that lesson. Like no matter if it's a kid who's quiet, but especially those quiet and really good kids, parents always hear, things that are not going well with their child. But even the kids who are very quiet, who their parents don't hear anything about them, they might never come to parent-teacher conferences, but also communicate to those parents, tell them how well their kid is doing. So even the kid who's mute, tell them like, they're such a good kid, they did such a good job on this. You never know how an impact, as a parent emailed me. And then the kid came the next day, he said, you emailed my mom about me? I said, yeah, I did. He's like, okay. And he was the best. And he was like quiet. Then he started talking to me more throughout the semester. So that helped a lot. So I really encouraged that.
My mom was a math teacher at Conway High School in the late 80s, early 90s. And she started the year with this every year. She would make contact home, positive contact home. And I don't know where I heard this metaphor, but you have to make deposits before you make withdrawals. And you can't go to the bank. If you've made no deposits, you're not making any withdrawals. And so we need to make as many deposits as we can. So when it's time to make that withdrawal, we've built up this rapport with the parent that they know that we're not just going to reach out when we have a problem, but that we're going to reach out to let them know what's going right. And this is the same thing is true with our students. We need to be building them up every moment. I always found that if I paid attention to and focused my comments on giving positive reinforcement to the behaviors that were good, that I didn't have to deal as much with the bad behaviors, because when your focus and your attention is constantly beating this to death, like the punishment, the negative reinforcement, in a weird way, a lot of students, they just want attention. And if you're giving attention to the students who are misbehaving all the time and the kids who are behaving aren't getting any of your attention, that creates this dynamic that I think is really unhealthy in your classroom culture. So you should spend, in my opinion, 2 to 3 times as much time on the positive comments as you do on the discipline.
Yeah, that's one thing we talk about when we talk about good classroom management strategies, and that's building relationships with students, but also building relationships with parents, because we all know that consistency is key and authenticity equals trust. And so when you reach out to parents and share information about, how their student is doing when, they're doing well, or whatever information you have to share, when you have to reach out to them again with an issue, like I said, it's well received. And like with when Angelica mentioned the student, just sharing something positive led to a better relationship with that student.
Right.
Okay.
And then just one thing to add too, because I know with high school students or high school teachers, sorry, I know we talked about you have like millions and millions of students, not literally, but it feels like it. What helped me out, especially that first year, what I did, I literally divided, because during my planning period, I would just spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I put a block. I said, I'm going to call this amount of students' parents this day. Then each day I kind of broke it apart, and that helped a lot. So if those 2 high school teachers were kind of worried, like, how am I going to communicate to all these parents? What I also did, I noticed we have Google Classroom in our class. So what I did, it tells you the list of all the parents' names, and I just did a mass email, but it wasn't all the parents could see each other's emails, but one mass email. So like once a month, I just sent like a quick, like, hello, this is what we're doing in our class. I'm so glad to have your students in my class, and actually receive parent comments back from that email. So those are just quick ways to just, especially for high school teachers, how you can send out a lot of, messages to your parents, especially if you have so many students.
Right. And that's actually another tip, which is basically use technology, utilize the tools and resources you have at your disposal to make communicating with parents easier. So whether or not you're talking about assignments or grades or any updates that you have to share, parents appreciate communication. So.
Absolutely.
And I know another thing, you think it's a given because, of course, at the beginning of the year, parents are given a schedule about, what's going to happen at school, like when parent-teacher conferences are. But I think that another tip is to personally invite parents to parent teacher conferences. I know it's already on their schedule. They may have gotten a telephone call from the school database system about it. But if you personally invite parents to parent teacher conferences, I think you will have a better turnout.
Absolutely. I wanted to share one tip, and that is something that takes time to learn, but that is to check your own biases when you're when you are when you're communicating with parents, especially face to face.
Mhm.
We all have these implicit biases that we have to work through and figure out, whether it's about economic status, about race, about gender, like all these different things that we have to really check, because that can really impact the quality of the conversation that you have. And the other thing is, Brene Brown talks about this, and it's just assume that everybody's doing the best they can. If this parent is in a bad mood, if this parent seems somewhat confrontational, make the assumption that they're doing the best that they can. Maybe there's other things going on in their life that you don't really know about that are causing them stress. Maybe they've had past experiences with other teachers that their child has had that were really unpleasant and or negative, and they're bringing some of that into the equation with you.
Yes.
Try to let that go, drop the judgment, and drop the sort of reactionary part of yourself that wants to defend yourself, and really see through that everybody has a struggle that you don't know about, including you as a teacher. But our job as teachers is to remain professional, to check those biases and look for ways to bridge gaps and make connection. And that's what I would say. Another thing is, when you're meeting with parents, find out about the parents. Ask them, what do you do? Tell me a little bit about yourself. Get to know them so that they don't think this is just a transactional relationship where all you want to do is tell them about, what their student is doing wrong or right. That you want to know about the parent, like what they're up to, what their ideas and thoughts are and beliefs are, and that kind of thing, so that you can then tailor your communication accordingly.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. In other words, just be empathetic. So,
Right.
show empathy, let them express their concerns, let them share what thoughts they have, listen actively to their perspective, because I think something like that builds trust too,
Mm.
with relationships with parents. Okay. Another tip I think would be to celebrate achievements, and we did mention this. Recognize and also celebrate students' accomplishments, share their successes with parents. Parents want to hear the good stuff as well as the not so good stuff. So, and I know one common challenge is oftentimes when, parents are hard to reach or when they're disengaged, but, you know, it's basically critical, and it's crucial to maintain
Mhm.
that patience and just keep trying different communication skills.
Well,
Okay. All right. So those are the tips that we have. Do we have any additional tips, Angelica or Todd?
I would just say the last thing is it's okay to feel nervous, but also think about the parent is probably also nervous as well. Because again, you're talking about their child, but also remember, I remember one of my professors, she said how she used to end it off like, this is not really our child, but we are in this together. So make sure, like, it's not you against the parent and hopefully not the parent against you, but that you guys are here together for that child. And also know that you are an expert in the classroom. So the things or the concerns you do have, it's okay to let the parent know. So don't feel, especially as a new teacher, don't feel like you don't know anything, but you're also the adult in the classroom. And also know that everything is going to be okay. So take a breather before that first parent teacher conference. Always also have your notes out before the parent teacher conference. You're just not going off the fly because you might forget. I've had those moments. My mind will go blank and they'll look at my notes. Okay, so this is what we're talking about. So make
Mhm.
sure you are prepared and you have your notes. And like what everyone said, give the good, like they call it the not the cheesecake, the little hamburger, the good, what you really need to talk about, and something good at the end, and then tie it all together.
yeah. That's great. I would say, definitely, like I said earlier, build the bridge. But I would also say it's really important that when you are delivering information and news about a student, that you stay as close as you can to objective information. When you get into subjective statements, that's much more likely to create conflict. If I say your student's bad versus I say your student got up 8 times today in classroom or there were eight disruptions in class. The first one is much more likely to where we can debate that. The second one is just objective data. It's taking out the personalization of it and just saying, here are the things that I'm seeing. Here's, whether it's an academic issue or a behavioral issue. If you've got objective data, that can't really be argued with. And it also takes some of the fuel out of the parents who may be defensive and feeling like you're judging them or judging the student. So take out the judgment, take out the subjectivity, stick to objective stuff, and really think about what's the softest way I can deliver difficult information. What's the kindest and most compassionate way that I can deliver that. I think if you do that, if you stick to all those tips, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. And I guess I would close with, I always would say, treat your students the way you would want your child to be treated, and treat your parents the way that you would want to be treated. So if you just stick to that, be empathetic and do what's in the best interest of both students and parents, I think you'll have a phenomenal relationship. So that's a wrap for today's episode, folks. We've explored the world of parental involvement, parental engagement, and actually discussed some tips and strategies for communicating with parents effectively. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to CEWL Beans on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts, experiences, and suggestions. Remember, a strong partnership between teachers and parents can do wonders for a child's education. But before we end, we'd like to share a few upcoming events with you. The first is CEWL Coaching. It is dedicated one-on-one coaching. It's a program that's tailored to meet the unique needs and aspirations of induction teachers. So it's customized support. We have 3 coaches. We're available on Tuesdays and Thursdays. There's actually a session going on right now from 6 to 8 p.m. So please join us and spread the word. And we also have coming up on November 4th, the 2023 CEWL Induction Teacher Symposium at Hayward Career and Technology Center here in Columbia. We have an amazing lineup. Jed Derryberry, who is author extraordinaire, he will be keynoting the event. We'll have 12 concurrent sharing sessions, networking opportunities for induction teachers and early career educators. We'll have a panel discussion. All participants will get to shop at our SCEA pop-up store, where they get materials and supplies for their classrooms and books for their classroom libraries. We'll even have the SCEA member benefits speed dating style, so you don't want to miss that. All early career educators are welcome and invited to join us, and you can actually find that link to register on our website at CEWL.us. So thanks for tuning in, everyone, and adding your voice to these critical conversations. Stay tuned for our next episode on December 12th, where we'll dive into innovative teaching strategies and methodologies. Until then, keep it cool and have a great evening, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.